Recording.
There we go. It's recording now.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodness me. All right. Sorry about that. So there was, going back, it's just general tips, how you can sort of think about planning and mapping your ideas. There is a discussion sheet that I also put up, which I can refer to, and then looking at the introduction, remembering your audience, not making the assumption that your audience understands the topic, or because you are sort of sharing a language that you and the audience may have a common understanding of what's being discussed. So always trying to make explicit to your audience what you mean in what you are trying to introduce and how you are explaining that. Definitions that might be helpful in ways of explaining to make it more clear. Contextualizing is something we were talking about, Sundus.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
Making sure that we've got the context of what we mean by youth and how youth are understood and why they're problematized in the way that they are, and how we can contextualize them within the topic that we've chosen to look at. Or in terms of the article that you might have chosen to review. So it depends on the approach that you're taking.
Okay. I am doing the first one.
Okay.
The first option I actually took.
Brilliant. Okay.
How about you, Ray?
Yeah. Good question.
I'm doing social media, gangs and youth culture.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. So you've got the topic, or you have an article that you're using as your main?
I'm still looking for an article.
There are some on Moodle that you can have a look at.
Yeah. 1 second. My mom's calling me. 1 second.
No problem.
Yeah, the articles on Moodle which you added, they are very helpful. I find them, they are very good, especially.
Okay.
Yeah, I use 2 of them quite often.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that. Excellent.
No, yeah, the articles, I'm just trying to, because I have difficulty reading, so I'm just trying to process what I'm reading.
Problem.
So I'm trying to figure out which ones I want to choose from.
Okay, that's not a problem. I mean, the point of trying to get these slides here is just to highlight, really, it's a process for everyone. So we just start by trying to, I would say, read it through once.
Okay.
Then go back over it and start to highlight it. What would you say?
Yeah.
Is that what you do, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would highlight and then try to see what are the key points. And then, of course, you want to contextualize it within what we've discussed so far in terms of the ways, as we were saying before, youth have been discussed, and you want to look at theory and go back to weeks 1 and 2 to help you with that.
Okay.
And then make sure that you're sort of you're drawing out the sort of hooks, as it were, I would say, in terms of how we engage with the discussion about youth. And you can sort of introduce the article and aspects of social media. You need to discuss, as Sundus was saying, she's looking at social policy, how you would want to introduce that, why it's relevant, and ways in which young people have, you know, how the discourse handles that. In other words, how does the literature handle the notion of either social policy in light of young people, and similarly social media and young people, and gangs in the context of what you're looking at, Ray?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So on that main body, so I've skipped the introduction now because I've just touched on that. There's only one more slide after this one on this presentation, which is on Moodle. Think about in the main body those bullet points, and try to sort of frame it so that you're introducing what you want to say.
Okay.
And then elaborating it, drawing on the literature, going back to the reading that you have, if it's a key reading that you're looking at, extending it to your wider reading, and saying what the relevance is of noting these points that you want to draw to our attention. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I put a table together for my previous group, and it might be helpful for you. I can try and incorporate that and put it onto Moodle for you. And it's really just trying to break up the different processes involved, and really make more explicit the process of analysis and how you can extend and show the depth of your analysis based on going beyond the sort of descriptive element and trying to make the connections and the links and saying what that means and what we can take away from that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so if you want to just glance your eyes over that slide, if there's anything that shouts out, or if you're happy, I'll move on to the next slide. I won't read it out to you because I think you can see it for yourself.
I just
I think
like to...
you go.
Oh, sorry, go for.
No, go for it, Sindhu.
I just like to ask, is that okay to, I use the quotation for the definition, because definitions are kind of, it's hard to put into words. There was like really lovely quotations about the definition, so I just used them as in the brackets. Does it be okay?
I think definitions are fine as long as you introduce them clearly and you use them well.
Okay.
Okay.
I explain it.
Have a bit of a reaction. I don't know about Arif, but I would start to have a bit of a twitch, you know, when someone says the dictionary definition is.
No.
No.
I'm exaggerating for purpose. I hope you understand that. I'm not saying that you'll do this, but sometimes in the past students have done that, and it's almost like it's a sort of a comfort blanket. It's a nice way to start things, and then you feel confident to then carry on. And I think if you can avoid that approach, I would say definitions are useful, but make sure you don't lose sight of that definition and how you can use the definition to explain the positions that you have been looking at and how you draw your own understanding and conclusions from that.
Okay, yeah, I did it like that way. It's fine.
I mean, that's always why we say clarity is important. Explain what you're saying so that your audience understands. And part of that clarification is saying, by using this phrase, this is what I understand. This is how I'm using it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So defining. It's not just relying on those, the crutch of the dictionary definitions, if you see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
No, exactly. And I just want to add to that. And I know some of this, because I've read your work last year and this year, and I know you don't do this, but a lot of the students, they use definitions when they don't understand something. And that's the wrong way to go about it. It's very important that when you do use definitions, and I try and have a limit of about 25 words, just so that it's, you know, it's a short, snappy quotation that you're using, which is fine. But afterwards, just like Mona said, you need to explain what this definition means to you, but also in relation to your wider arguments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Different authors understand and use terms and definitions in different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's why it's always good to be clear and always make sure that your reader understands how you are referring to the term and how you understand it, and you can draw on how others understand it and use it to help.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's a very good question. Okay, so and as you said, with definitions, so we're defining terms that we're using. We're not just sort of, similarly on the sort of flip side of that, we're not just loosely using terms of reference and assuming that our audience knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, I prefer to use definition if I really like it. It's clearly saying what I want to say. That's why I said it's better to use this how it is, but then after I'm going to put this into my words. Excellent. There is no better way to explain than definition, how they explain. Some of them is like that.
I don't have a problem with that. I think if you just take on board what Arif and I have been saying, then I don't think there's a problem.
That's fine. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and then that sort of takes you to the conclusion. So the main body is really important, but actually it's supported and it relies on the introduction, and the introduction will give you the structure and the context and allow you then to go into the detail of expanding further in your main body. And then your conclusion is a summary, but I would like to think that you could also use your conclusion to reinforce key points that you think are important.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, go on.
Do we have to use the subheadings in the main body?
I don't know, Arif, I don't mind subheadings.
Okay.
As long as we're not looking at bullet point type, structures, and that it's relevant.
Okay. So far I didn't use it, but when I just see the themes in there, I said, okay, maybe I need a subheading.
Well, it might be that you want to look at 3 specific things or 2 specific points that you want to really discuss in more depth.
Okay.
If you set that up in your assignment, then within the body you could do that, but then you can also skillfully incorporate it in the main body without having to have a subheading.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Definitely. That question always
does,
comes
doesn't
up
it?
for a lot of students. Yes, yeah. And it's about your writing style.
Yeah.
Sometimes students like using subheadings because it keeps them on track and they know what they're writing about, so they don't go wayward. And I also advise some students to use subheadings if they have that problem, because it also helps the reader know what you're talking about. But if you're clear in your writing and you have good topic sentences, joining sentences, some students don't need it, because it's clear when you're talking about one topic and it's clear when you move on to another topic. So it's about your writing style, really.
Absolutely. And I think we discussed this maybe previously, but certainly as Arif is saying, and I think we're both in agreement, if you set it up so that you're introducing the topic, and then you go on to discuss it, and if you've structured what you want to say in your introduction so that we know what to expect, when you introduce it, it won't come as a surprise. And you can signpost then to your reader clearly why you're moving from one point to another. So you can make those strategic links as well, so that your reader doesn't feel thrown off. Why are students moving on to this point all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really important, that you have those kind of key linking points, but and it's sort of something that we can feel that we can anticipate and know why, because you're telling us you're moving from one thing to the next. Sevda, I think, has joined us. Hello, Sevda.
Hello, Mina. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I just came to listen.
All right. Well, by all means, in and say something too if you feel moved to, or if you're curious or something's not clear.
Yeah, all right. I actually have one question.
There you go.
Do we need to consider all area?
I didn't quite hear the question. I don't know if Arif did.
No, I didn't.
Could you just repeat it, please?
So do we need to consider the author's expertise in the area that we're discussing?
Is there a particular reason you're asking that question? An example?
No, I was thinking about it. Like, do we need to consider it or not?
You are, in a way, in effect, considering the author's position, if you want to put it that way. You will hope that they have some expertise by presenting the discussion and elaborating on it and using the resources and research available to them to make the claims that they're making and presenting the arguments. So of course you're taking into consideration what they're trying to communicate to you. When you say their expertise, if it's someone who is saying, you know, I'm a sociologist or a psychologist, and I've carried out this research, and based on the research that I've undertaken, then you're sort of respecting the fact that there is some credibility, hopefully, in there. But actually, the way that they communicate the research and how it was conducted, and what arguments they are producing as a result, will give some weight to the credibility, or raise some concerns or reservations about what they're saying. So to that extent, I think you are taking into consideration the expertise, because your task is to really critique and to investigate either the reading that you've prioritized as your key text to refer to help you engage in the discussion, or other sources that you're going to use to help discuss the topic. It's going to have a bearing in terms of to what extent you have a position to take in light of the positions that have been presented to you from the author. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Is that clear? Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
No, you're welcome. I hope, as long as it's clear.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
All right. Because at the end of the day, we want you to become the experts. Right? So what I wanted to try and do is, if I stop sharing this slide, is this okay for you then?
It's okay for me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sevda, it's being recorded, so you can, when I put it up with the recording, you can go back and see if there's anything that you see that raises questions. I'm going to try and see if I can find the other document, which was on the slide. Let's see. Oh yes, that's the one. Okay. Now, going back and forth. Hold on. Oh gosh. Okay. Right. I'm hoping that works. Does that help? Can you see that?
Yeah, we've seen this.
Oh,
so that's what I'm hoping. All right. So this is on Moodle as well. And it's another way to help give you some sort of direction in terms of planning, as it says, your essay.
Oh, you make a lovely project. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. As you know, I mean, I appreciate there's a lot of information, and sometimes we skip it, we miss it. So I appreciate Sevda says she's seen it, and that's wonderful. And if there are questions that you might have, or then now's the time to ask, or if you haven't seen it, at least now you know it's there. And then underneath it sort of breaks it down further. And I think, and I will try to add, if it's possible, the table that I mentioned earlier. It's another way of thinking. People think differently, and different ways of approaching the planning. Some like flow charts, other people like to write lots of notes and then restructure their notes and so on. But it just highlights the structure and the sort of the flow of the process.
Is this on Moodle too, Mina?
This that I'm currently sharing, yes, it is.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. That would be lovely, guide to just check if I did cover everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please do refer to, use it if it helps you, and try to take on board the points. Think about examples that you can illustrate, because also what you want to bear in mind is you're talking about youth, you're talking about a topic area, you're looking at specific discourses, and you also want to relate that to education.
Yeah.
So what does that mean then? What are the implications for practice? Given what we know, given what you know, what you found out, the arguments that you've seen, the context that is presented, what does this suggest to you is important for us to think about? Are there compromises that should be made? Are there, challenges or ways in which you can see moving forward even, that you can imagine ways to reconfigure or maybe to highlight things, strengths even, that could support our understanding better in a way that we, you know, look at how young people see themselves and how they might be more engaged in, you know, in healthy ways or positive ways to help young people in society, you know, and so on. So I think that's something to remind you is just to don't forget that element of how does it impact education? What are the things we need to think about?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For well, when actually I had the feedback from Arif, I was concentrating mostly access to higher education, how affect youth participation, something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But then I bring up such as how we can support them, or how the parents support them when they are younger, which will help for them to adapt in society in the future. I bring some kind of the way how the parents opportunities, educational, like curricular activities, stuff like this. Does it to children way or?
Yeah, potentially. I think what you want to remind yourself, and I want to allow Arif also to comment, but just briefly, think about the youth settings. There may be an element of which you might explain certain behavior or certain reasons for seeing young people the way we do, and the responses that we have towards people, like strategies we use to support them, whether that be in terms of, let me think, in terms of how kind of having access to resources or having clubs available locally, and those sorts of things. But think about the youth settings as examples.
Okay.
Not to say you can't include sort of elements of domestic context and home and family, but I don't want you to deviate into sort of
like that way.
Things that you might have looked at in terms of behavior management or children's learning and thinking and so on, in terms of how parents support. Not to say it isn't important, but try to remember the context.
I was just kind of thinking that is the way can limit their education when they are younger, if they come from the working class. That's the way I kind of make a link. If they are not well supported educationally when they are younger, because of their classes, their education could be limited, then they will struggle in the future to being participated in society or raise their voice in certain areas.
Okay, so you're contextualizing it within social class, because that's the area that you're looking at.
Yeah. And then I bring back in higher education, they can actually change their social classes because of social mobility.
So you're linking this to aspirations?
Yes.
And social mobility?
Yes.
Okay. And to a certain level as well, meritocracy. All those sort of sociology kind of, you know.
And habitus, fields,
habitus.
All this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I understand what you're saying. Okay. In that case, then, if you're contextualizing it, you're giving a sort of historical element, a socio-historical element of how class impacts opportunities for young people and how they see themselves.
Yes.
And how they see themselves engaging in society, what their prospects are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's true. You can always, it's a good way to start off. And as you discuss ways in terms of how you engage with the literature, you can always go back to those challenges and ways in which you identify and interpret how that could be challenged.
Yeah, I bring up all, start supporting them when they're younger, and then after that, they get better in the university when they access to higher education. And then what kind of opportunity could be for them in higher education, such as field, how they can use the resources in field in university.
Okay, and you can also comment on how, you know, recent moves or initiatives look at attainment of young people in higher education from those particular backgrounds is enabling. Some would say it's a very positive thing, and you can link that to literature.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I feel much
I again agree with everything that Mona's been saying, and from the sounds of it, I really like the way you're approaching it. It seems like, and again, I haven't read your main body yet,
Yeah.
but it seems like there's a nice thread going. So again, I don't know how you've defined youth, you know, from what ages, but you talk about it from across the stages. And again, they're going to be different, and so it sounds like you're there's a thread going along, and you're linking it to theory as well.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you. But I didn't actually clarify what age group I'm talking about. I said adolescence. Adolescence age. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think so. That's
Okay,
fine.
lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel much better.
Yeah.
I'm on the right track. Thank you, Arif.
No worries.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask, or have you also had a chance to look at the different brainstorms as well that I put up on Moodle based on the past of how you might think of structuring? Those were a bit more kind of freestyle, but those are also up on Moodle as well.
Okay.
If you want me to, I can show you them. Just to briefly kind of make sure that you know where, you know they're there and what they look like. Let's see, what's that one? Yeah. So, gosh, there we go. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So excuse my bad handwriting.
Okay.
But yeah, again, it's trying to look at the structure, which is in the kind of center point there. You've got the introduction, and also something you guys are probably now very well experienced. This is something that we did with year 3 before, but your introduction is also informing how you need to set out and what your findings are. So in a way, you could say it's like a little abstract, right?
Yeah.
And then what you proceed to do is unpick that and sort of explain to your reader the finer details. So that's why I put conclusion in the brackets there. Think about the points that you want to explain, the references that help to discuss that. Concluding remarks, and these are the sort of programmatic writing ways of structuring your writing, introducing the point, elaborating it, saying what that means, what that shows, and how it leads you to the next point, right? And then you can introduce the next point. So make sure in the beginning that you've got the key issues and the points that you want to raise. Remember, you need to include theoretical underpinnings to what you want to say. So go back to weeks 1 and 2 and a little further. Look at, you know, the text and the literature that we shared then, and think about how you can make those connections. Go on, Ray.
No, I was just saying, okay.
Oh, okay. So think about poverty, class, crime, social perceptions, young ethnicity, young people, ethnicity. What do you want the audience to be left with in terms of what their understanding is? Remember that. Think about general points and then more specific points. And the reason I put that is sometimes students make general claims, general statements, without actually giving reference to how they arrive at making those general claims.
Okay.
Or how those general claims can be arrived at from the literature that they've read. So what are the specific things, the arguments that are, or the points that are of concern, and how you can sort of make the links, as it says there, to the specific details.
Okay.
So that's just one of the brainstorms, and there's another one as well, I think, which I could hopefully share if you can see that. So it's think about the different perspectives that the literature offers, and then what your voice is. What is it you want to say, right?
Oh, I see.
So what do you want to acknowledge? What do you want to identify with yourself in terms of, you know, how you find the arguments that have been presented in the literature? Think about stereotypes, the relationships between young people and significant others, and extend that out to society. That's why I've got my concentric circles, which I'm a huge fan of, as you know. All right. So sort of representations, expressions, the context, the setting, acknowledge all of these things in terms of how you present the topic, right? And that leads you to that sort of flow chart at the bottom. That little cluster in the middle leads you to the flow chart of thinking about youth identity and youth participation, and the responses that come from different positions in society towards them. And then what does that lead to? What are the consequences about youth engagement, youth activism? You don't have to mention everything, but try to make it relevant, you know, and sort of, so that we can see that there's a sort of, not just anticipating what you're going to say, but actually see the coherence of how these different factors and elements relate to one another. Yeah. And so as I've tried to put there, and I ran out of space, so the arrow went upwards, right? What does this lead to? What are the kind of ways that you can sort of see that helping us to understand better as a result of going through that journey with you, of how you've explained the context, the literature, the arguments, and so where that leads us. Okay?
Yeah.
So is there anything that, Arif, do you want to add anything, or are there any questions anyone has?
Nope.
Okay. So I think for next week, if you've got any outlines or any paragraphs that you want us to look at, then you can email us and we
that'd
can
be
go on to that. Okay?
Are we gonna have another meeting next week?
We can do, if that's something you would like to do. I'm very happy to.
Yeah, because if I could send because I don't know if I'm on the right track, so I will send you something in
So
this week, and
next week is the kind of week to do it, isn't it? Because we've only got right. So I think next week I'll set up a Zoom meeting. Arif, are you okay with the same time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you guys all right with the same time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll set that up for next week, and I'll put it up on. I'll send a message out again, like I did last time.
Okay.
Okay,
All
that would
right.
be great. But our submission is extended on the 21st of May.
Yes, that's right. I think I'm not sure how long we can keep on Zooming. I'll check up on that, because I think everyone is working to the 2 weeks of the semester.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean that if you have a query, you could email still somebody and see. In terms of your dissertation, you have to check with your dissertation supervisor about their availability, because what we've also got to try and do as staff is we've been asked to try and take our leaves at times so that it, gives us a break from, of all things, the technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think these 2 teaching weeks are the 2 formal teaching weeks.
Okay.
And then beyond that, it's really trying to see the availability of staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for me. I mean, mine is kind of ready, but I'm planning to send a part of my main body, maybe, to let you read, you or Arif.
That's fine. I think I mean, Arif and I did speak about having tutorials or doing another Zoom. So we can do that. We can do another Zoom next week and then look at individual samples or extracts and then what you want to send us, a couple of paragraphs or something like that. And then we can give feedback on that section.
Yeah, I'm going to send a bit part of my writing and I'm going to write my points as well as a bullet point.
Sure, that's okay. As long as it's not 3,000 words.
But I should say mine is, it will be definitely like 3,850, 100%.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, as long as it, you know, I don't want to penalize anybody for going over the word count. I once had to do that and it's so painful, you know, but yeah.
This is 10%. This is 10%. It's not over 3,000.
It's fine. I said, as long as you don't go over that, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's, you know, just keep doing the good work. And as long as you are rehearsing your thoughts, drafting, reviewing, giving yourself a break from what you're writing and going back to it, then, you know, you can, it's good. Don't always, you know what it is now. You're in 3rd year, so you never submit the first draft, and you guys I know won't do that. So you know you've been working on this, and it pays off in the end, hopefully, and you see that. So yeah, good.
I should say that at the beginning I was really struggling to understand what actually, you know, this model is going to teach me. But when I start doing my time and I start having fun, it was amazing to reading so many different resources. And I love it.
So nice to hear. Oh, I'm so pleased. And you know what? That's being recorded. So yeah, I can go back to that, cheer myself up when I need to.
Yes.
Oh, that's that.
Yes.
I mean, that's the biggest reward, isn't it, for any tutor, to feel
I love it.
you know, that you're enjoying it, and that the reading. You know, some of us, when we have leave, we try to make up with reading again, and you know, it's a little bit too much information maybe, but you know, you enjoy because you find you're discovering things, and that's the whole point. Is I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the reading and you're getting something out of it. And it can only do you good.
Yeah, that was fun, definitely.
Oh,
Thank you for that. That was amazing support, and I feel that is just great to, you know, make me feel that okay, I am on the right track. I did quite good way what I'm planned, so it's good. Thank you very much for that.
Good.
Good. Well, I think we're all pleased to hear that, and we want you to do well. So it's good to hear that as feedback too, that you're enjoying it and you're finding it helpful, the support that you're getting.
Thank you.
Okay. Sevda, was there anything you wanted to ask?
I think Sevda's gone.
I think she's left. Oh, okay. Are you happy? Shall we call it a day and then we catch up next week?
Yep.
Yeah, Muna, how about you stop the recording and then we can catch up
Absolutely.
after.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, so not Sevda, sorry, Sundus.
Ray and Sundus.
Take care. Nice to see you both and to hear
Thank you very
from
much.
You're very
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.